I just want to say something very quickly. Anything that you achieve in life, if you believe you achieve it by yourself, you are a liar.
It's a team.
You're not being honest. It is people who help you to achieve. They give you the opportunity, you make sure you prepare yourself and take it. But other people give you the opportunity. I came to live in Saint Lucia in 1984. I was going to the Olympic Games. The telephone rang in Barbados. It was Dr. Von Lewis.
Oh. This podcast is meant to platform those whose stories can give hope and inspire, those game changers who dare to look beyond the conventional, beyond what is expected, and seek new horizons. Do the things that are needed to advance the story of who we are as a Caribbean people, in the hope that breaking through would help foster hope and belief in a brighter future. Once in a generation, we stumble upon a unique talent, a talent that develops, matures, and helps to spawn a whole new way of delivering on an art form. Cricket commentary is such an art form, painting a picture with words alone for millions who will never see the pitch. And few have practiced it longer or with greater devotion than today's guest. His story begins in Pomeroon, Essequibo, deep in Guyana's interior, the fifth of 9 children of a farmer, a boy who dreamed of the microphone, though a stammer stood in his way. He taught himself to breathe through the starts of words and sentences and went on to call the game for nearly 60 years. 152 test matches, and 5 World Cups, building the very game he animated with his words as an administrator in Guyana and across the OECS. Today, we are pleased to welcome yet another game changer, a shaper who turned a boyhood impediment into one of the most recognizable voices in sports today, and who has chronicled the years when the West Indies ruled the cricketing world. Why? Because as the great Caribbean writer C.L.R. James once said, "What do they know of cricket who only cricket knew?" Reminding us that in the Caribbean, cricket has never merely been a game, but the story of a people. Today, I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Joseph Reds Perreira, a legendary voice of Caribbean cricket. Welcome to the 1461 podcast.
The 1461 podcast is brought to you by Bryson Company Limited in partnership with IBS, Harbour Club, Tropical Solar, and 1461 Enterprise, distributors of the world's best coffee.
Today, I am pleased to introduce and welcome on set a legend of West Indies cricket, a voice which has animated and painted the pitch with his words like no other. I am pleased to welcome Joseph Reds Perreira to the 1461 podcast. Welcome.
Well, it's nice of you to invite me. In the words of the late, great Sir Everton Weeks, it's nice to be remembered.
Well, you've done enough, I would say, and more than enough, not only to be remembered, but to be seen as one of the most iconic contributors of this beautiful game, even if you played that game beyond the pitch.
Well, it was a struggle because I didn't get off the mark very easily. As you mentioned, I stammered very badly, down to the point that as I grew up, And I moved from my hometown in the Pomeroon River to Georgetown, started to go to parties. I didn't have the confidence sometimes of asking a girl to dance because it might not come out. And Nat King Cole might have finished singing by the time I made the request.
But you started by saying that you grew up in the Pomeroon, deep in the interior of Guyana. Your dad was a farmer, from what we understand. Tell us a little bit about that beginning, that original story, how it began. How was life back then? Was it difficult? Did you help with the chores on the farm? What was life back then?
Life was beautiful. My father was a third generation John Perreira, John Louis Perreira, to be exact. And my great-grandfather came from Madeira.
Oh,
and the whole family tree came from Madeira, right? Not Lisbon. And they came, I think, when there might have been a problem with the agriculture in Portugal. And they were afraid that people might have been conscripted to the army. So many Portuguese came out to the Caribbean. And if you go through it carefully, there are Perreiras in Trinidad. There are Perreiras in St. Kitts. There are Perreiras in St. Vincent. And other than Perreiras, there's De Freitas and De Silva, and all the Portuguese names, because they came from a white background.
So, like Ralph Gonzalez, the Portuguese, I was always interested in how those Portuguese names became so entrenched in the region when we did not have a history of significant trade during the earlier colonial period with Portugal.
Yes, well, I think in some cases the British colonial rule even misspelled the names. For example, Perreira is P-E-R-E-I-R-A. But I grew up P-E-R-R-E-I-R-A. The British threw in an R. And we are stuck with it because my birth certificate is that, and my passport was P-E-R-R-E-I-R-A. And at school, I was that. So we moved on. I mean, like Gomes and Gomez.
Yes.
In Guyana, there's no Gomez, as Jerry Gomez, the cricketer. There's Gomes, G-O-M-E-S. There's a Z in Trinidad. And there are many examples. Comash in Guyana is not pronounced that way in Trinidad.
It's called Commission.
Pardon?
Commission. How do you pronounce it in Trinidad?
In Trinidad I think it'll be Camacho.
Camacho.
Yeah.
Camacho.
Yeah.
So you say life was great at the time, but what was your life like as a child? What was your life like as a child?
It was very humble, very simple, very basic. I mean, there was no radio, no television, right? You went to school by walking the river dam to the Martindale School, which still exists in a different form. My grandfather had built it. My grandfather is the father of the popular David Martins, the musician. And he built it for the community to be able to send their kids to school, because we'll all have to charge charity upriver, which is a long way paddling if you didn't have an outboard motor. So Martindale was within walking distance. It was supported by the quote-unquote government at the time. And we would walk to school and walk back to school. We had chores to do. We had to make sure that the pigs were fed, that the poultry, the chickens were brought back to the pen, and you make sure that they were fed. we had to do things like go to the vat and bring up water. And school things, all school. Your father and mother might give you chores. We would probably have a swim in a river in the morning as your bathroom, and a swim in a river in the afternoon. My mother cooked with wood fire. We used kerosene lamps, but we ate well. The farm was a plenty, so to speak. And the relationship between the people in the river was just difficult to explain. If we had oranges and you live on the other side of the river, which is the salt side, we live on the sweet side, and you had coconuts or whatever you had, we will do a barter. There'll be no money. And that would operate within a circle in the river.
How many people were in that area?
Pardon?
What was the population of that area?
I have no idea. I would have no idea. I suppose that it's documented because in terms of education system and people who have the rights to vote, it's all documented. But on the river itself, it went all the way down to the river mouth and all the way up towards Jacklow and Petersgill. These are names, of course, will mean nothing to our audience. And then there was a road that led us to Adventure. And we'll catch the bus. It was owned by a man called Cass, nice man. 40 people in the bus. And go to Adventure, we catch the steamer, and we cross the Essequibo River. The mouth is 20 miles wide. And when we get to Perreira, we will catch the train.
Steam.
And we get to Vredenhoop. And Vredenhoop, we'll cross to Georgetown on a ferry.
How long would that entire journey take?
That journey will probably take a day.
Wow.
And, my mother will prepare snacks, which we will have on the way, right? Your father was always there. And we will call a cab, an old Vauxhall in those days. And that was Georgetown, seeing Georgetown with street lights and cars and motorcycles and trucks. And
so how did your father, with his heritage from Madeira, Portugal, select the interior of Guyana?
Well, I don't think my father really had any choice of it. It's my grandfather's.
Okay.
They came, and I don't know what was the method of locating land, but the land was not easy to work. I mean, the lands were, really maiden lands. They had to be. We had to cut drains, and we had to cut cocos to drain the land, and we had to. No tractors, of course. It's all by hand. And my father planted coffee. He planted avocado, oranges, and all the root crops. All the root crops. I mean, the quality of our eating was very good, and nothing really imported.
So no fertilizers, fresh food, fresh meat, good fish. I guess you got fish from the river as well.
Oh yes, definitely, right. And there would be, of course, the fishermen, and there would be people in large boats selling cloths, right? Maybe a Lebanese background or something like that, and they'll come paddling, and they're selling keiki or whatever cloths they might have, and it was that kind of a very simple life, and
So
people will paddle past your house and said, "Hello, Mr. John," and he said, "Hello." I mean, it was that kind of a very warm very warm country feeling, which doesn't exist in many parts of a city.
And what took you from that beautiful, idyllic situation with your family to, I would assume, Georgetown?
Well, I think, if my memory serves me right, the day the war ended, VJ Day, we got on our father's sloop, the Joe and Patsy, named after my two sisters. And we went through the river, through the Atlantic, around to Georgetown.
That's May 1945.
Yeah, 45. My father had bought a house in Charlestown, 39 Russell Street. And we came the evening. There was enough beds for all the ladies. I have 5 sisters. And my mother, of course, and my father. The boys slept on the Chronicle newspaper, which was one of the national newspapers. And, he then went out and stocked the house properly. And eventually we started school. Yeah, I went to Brickdam, sort of Roman Catholic, and we walked to that, and we walked past. We walked back every day. And
so what happened to the farm? The farm you never...
No. The farm was never. We went back there every Holy Thursday night by my father's sloop, and we'll take friends too.
So who took over the farm?
Oh, my father kept going and coming. Right, he had his staff, and it was fairly well run. And he never lost touch. And we will have a huge steamer from Georgetown. I remember the Tharpon. Huge thing will come in the river. And my father will have his produce, whether it's bags of oranges or bags of coffee, right, go alongside, and it's taken by the transport and harbors. And they will go right up the river. And that's how the people were able to sell their produce and make money, because you had an agent in Georgetown who took it. There was a man who took all the coffee that my father could possibly hand over.
So the name of Guyana being the bread basket, I'm not sure if that's a name that has been given to Guyana by other Caribbean folk or Latin American folk, but as being the bread basket, it really bore through during that period. Really
Yes. I mean, there was no shortage of food. And now, I mean, I go back to Guyana every now and then. I was in Guyana in May, and you go past the main market, and you just see greens and watermelon, you name it, Same thing in Trinidad too. It's not just a Guyanese thing. You see the same thing as you come in from Piarco. You see all the greens, all the pineapples, all the sapodillas you can have.
So take us to that period after the war, after moving to Georgetown. What did you do at that time, and how did you eventually get into broadcasting?
Well, I was never really supposed to be a broadcaster. It's like, wanting to be a racing driver and you have bad eyes. I stammered. But I had a mother, Claudia. Well, everybody believes that their mother was the best in the world, and I'll say that. She was a very warm person. My father was a more serious man in the business side of getting things done for the family, self-educated. And my mother would allow me to lie in bed as I grew up and fantasy. I will do a couple of overs of a test match with Truman coming to bowl to Wardell, or Jim Laker to Walcott, as the case may be, or Statham to Christiani, and she allowed the fantasy. And in that fantasy world, I never stammered. It was fantasy. And we had a neighbor who every Friday night played American shortwave radio, right? And I think it was Armed Forces Radio. And the Brewster broadcast boxing from Madison Square Garden. And I can stay in my bedroom and hear each and every punch, each and every commentary. And I started to pick up those
intonation,
those things. I will do imaginary Brazil versus England at Wembley, and D-Day and Pelé and Tastau and Gilmar and the Jalmar Santos and Bellini and Billy.
So was your love always cricket, or would you?
No. My love was really cricket, but I did other things. I did other stupidness, you might say.
No, I'm talking about in terms of sport commentary, because you're speaking about boxing and other sports. Did you have any interest in other sports, or just cricket?
I had to have, because I went to England in 1962. I was working with Coca-Cola. Mm-hmm. And that was quite a job, because I was selling Coca-Cola in a market which was dominated by Pepsi-Cola. Mm. So because I was known in sport, Coca-Cola employed me to be able to knock on doors, so to speak.
How old were you at that time?
I was getting on to my early 20s, right? And then one afternoon I came home, and my father said, "Son, you're going to England next week. You're going to take your two sisters and your brother, Brian, my sister Mary and Yvonne, to England to see them into school." We had an uncle in London who would have arranged that, but I had to go along with them. Mm-hmm. And April the 7th, 1962, I arrived in London.
Boat, or did you take the plane?
Oh, you took the plane. There was a charter. There was a charter. And I think those days, for whatever reason, we stopped in Bermuda and then London. Mm-hmm. Coming back, we stopped at the Azores. Mm-hmm. That's in 1967. I spent 5 years, and it was an enjoyable 5 years. I knocked around the BBC World Service, the Caribbean Service, and if I get a job to interview some personality, that's 5 guineas. 5 guineas is a lot of money in the 60s. And I took an interest in the arts. I would go and see Errol Fitzgerald, Oscar Peterson, Sammy Davis Jr.
You saw Sammy Davis?
Yeah, I saw Sammy Davis Jr., Johnny Mattis.
Wow.
They were all coming to London, and if you could, I make about £14 then, £13. And the first thing you do, the first thing you remember to do is pay your rent. Mm-hmm. You put aside some money for the underground, and you'll try to work a little budget of what you need. And you will buy things as the week go on. Mm-hmm. So it was a very tight situation regarding money. But if you're going to be in London, and you have all these opportunities to go and see some world-renowned people. I never saw Frank Sinatra. I never saw Nat King Cole. But I saw most of them.
So did the BBC also give you an opportunity to start your career in broadcasting? Because we want to take that loop from those moments of fantasy and practice and imagination to where you actually put your talent to practice and on showcase. When was the first time you took the mic?
The first time I took the mic is when I went back to Guyana in 67. 6 months of the last period, I hitchhiked to Denmark. And I got a job in a restaurant washing dishes not by hand, but on those fancy machines, you plug them. And I wash at 8, come in at 7, I wash again at 12, and I wash again at 4. The dishes will come up on an elevator. And I said, let me try and overcome some of the words I was having trouble with before you get to broadcasting. I could not, my dear friend, say Shillingford, Rodriguez, Sri Lanka, Sheila, Sherry. I'm saying I had difficulties with the S's and the R's. And I would write them down, Sri Lanka, Switzerland, and rehearse them like homework. And so some of the guys thought I was probably crazy. But what was important, and I got no advice, because you couldn't go to the drugstore and buy something and swallow it, and all of a sudden you're over the problem. You have to save the confidence. Shillingford, Rodriguez, Stevenson, Switzerland, etc., etc. But you store the confidence of being able to say it. And if you can say it once, you convince your mind that you can say it again. So I came back in 6 or 7, December the 12th. And I knocked around trying to get a job in sport, right? Because I had done a preseason with Arsenal and a preseason with Chelsea. Because I was interested in coaching. And I fronted up. Maybe they were so shocked that a West Indian wanted to come and I was interested in coaching. I wasn't part of the playing staff, but I worked with the coaches. And I eventually started to work for the JS. I was doing a 50-minute program every Saturday, and that was my income. I probably made about 100 Caribbean dollars. I rode a bicycles. And I kept riding a bicycle until one evening, I went out to a party with a young Canadian volunteer, and we went back home, and her flatmate was playing chess with a friend of mine, a brilliant broadcaster, the late Hugh Chumley, who was recognized throughout the Caribbean. He worked with UNESCO. And the man says, "Hi, Reds, glad to see you. We got permission today to open a second station." Before that, it was Radiofusion. It was a British station, right? So we had a national station called GBS. And back to your question about whether I was only interested in cricket. To get the job, I had to be an all-rounder. I had to be able to do boxing, which I had a good background because of what I told you about. All right. Well, I did my cricket. I did my football. I did motor racing. I learned the technique to do table tennis. But the table tennis, you never start with the server because it's so quick. You have to start with the retriever, You serve to me and I'm on the backhand. And you call the names. And we did that live. The Caribbean Table Tennis Championships were live. The many boxing championships were all live. And the motor racing, every Easter, November had a huge meet at the airport, South Dakota. There'll be 15,000, 20,000 people, and we will do 17 races that day. And you have to do a lot of homework, You also had to cover the matches going on in the week. And you couldn't get on the phone, and I call you and say, who beat who? You had to go to the venues that people see you, identify with that you were there, so that your credibility, you talk about credibility,
And the credibility is you have to, what you report has to be firsthand. What
Well, you'll then go back to the station. We had an evening sports cast about 6:45, 50 minutes. And if there was rugby, if there was basketball, if there was volleyball, if there was netball, or whatever sport was playing, all right? On the weekend, it might be track and field. You will make sure you have all the scores, and later on you will have an old German Euro recorder, which you'll get a clip from an administrator. And later on, we were able to use the telephone with a connection to the tape. So I can call you as president of what? And say, what's the program for the upcoming Easter period? And so we'll be having a 10K, we're doing. So you start to hear the voices of the administrators, the voices of the people.
And that would be the early 70s, yes.
That was 1968.
So the year after
1968, that's when the station started. The first time I ever made an entry into international, I'd done a lot of regional matches, I'd gone to Barbados, and I did Guyana, Barbados. I went to Dominica, Combined Islands, beat Guyana in Roseau. I'd done those things. But India came in 1971, and GBS was going to compete with Radio Demerara, and I got an opportunity to do my first test match.
So we're going to pause here for a quick break, and after we return, you'll tell us about that first opportunity for your first of 152 test matches. See you after the break.
Coming up after the break, more with our guest.
I'm Precious Octave, a subcontractor of Bryce & Company. I've been working in the roofing business 22 years. Working with Bryce over 8 years, installing the standing seam, the U-panel, the Spanish tile, and the corrugated. Because of the company efficiency, they make my job easier. On this project, we have installed 8 roofs and more to come. The aluminum standing seam from Bryce, this is one of the best roofs you can go with. With my experience working with Bryce material, I can highly recommend them to my clients.
To experience the benefits of a tropical solar water heating system, call 453-1868 in Castries or 454-6344 in Vieux-Fort.
Welcome back. So you've done some work in Guyana, you've done some regional work, but you get a chance now for your first big test. Not only a test match, but a test of your own ability to operate at that level. I think it was India, West Indies at border. Take us back then.
Well, the spoken word is, a spoken word. You can't put it back. Mm-hmm. You can write an article, tear it up and throw it away and start all over again. So one of the things that Hugh Chumley, since 1968, do your preparation, do your research, And in those days, you didn't have smartphones, you didn't have emails, you didn't have Cricinfo, you didn't have WhatsApp, right? You had to listen to the BBC and try to somehow the other go down to the British Council and read all the English papers and pick up little things. But what helped me really, in 1951, my father had bought a shortwave radio, a GC, and I would catch Radio Australia and listen to West Indies, Australia on shortwave in 1951.
Wow.
Alan McGilvery, Johnny Mars, Michael Charlton. These were the Australians. And life is very funny. Later in life, I was able to do 10 test matches with McGilvery, a man who was just a voice, a man who I went to his home in Australia. I met him at the airport. We traveled in the Caribbean. In 1961, I did the same thing. This before I touched the radio station.
That's as Rose Hall?
61, when we had the Thai tests, shortwave radio, I would listen until 4 o'clock in the morning and struggle to go to school next day. But the radio was captivating, very theatres, very, because you're not seeing, So when I did my first test match in 71, I had that background because I used to listen to John Allott and Rex Alston from England, and you had some idea of you have to paint the picture. You have to remember that people are turning on and turning off, and as soon as they turn on, they want to know the score. And if you say it's 118 for 4, they want to know. They expect you to tell you, how the 4 wickets fell. The conditions, who won the toss, who was left out. It's an ongoing process where you have to keep painting the picture and upgrading and upgrading. But you got to remember, you're not there for yourself. You are there for the 5 or 6 million people in the Caribbean and the umpteen million abroad. And we had a large following in India when they came because Gavaskar and Sardesai were national heroes.
So you never got formally trained, from what I'm hearing from you?
No. I never formally trained. I never had a scholarship, but I'm very happy. I'm very happy that I was able to do it the way I do it.
But you worked with greats like Tony Cozier, who was able to, I'm sure they say iron sharpens iron. You got to work with some of the locals, well, I shouldn't say locals, but some of the other prolific commentators like Tony.
Well, I first knew Tony from 1965 because I coached then British Guyana. Because of my experience in England, I had coached a local club. I had coached the Guyana under 23, and I was made the national coach. And I went to Barbados. There was a Caribbean tournament, and Kojo was writing for his dad's paper. So we met through football. But as the years went on, in 68, when it started, Kojo was part of the GBS team in 71.
Okay.
Right.
For that same India, West Indies.
Yes, and we had an Indian commentator all the way from Delhi, Betty Sabatakari, who was a real, very elderly Indian man. My sister used to make a pot of tea, and I will take it to him so he can be refreshed. But he was a well-respected name in India.
So that test match at Border, it was Tony, it was you, and this other gentleman who brought commentary?
There was Basil Butcher, the former West Indies batsman, the late, doing comments. There was somebody else doing comments. I think there was a Jamaican doing comments. I can't. His name is Robinson. You're pushing the envelope there a little bit.
But you were the most junior at the time.
I was the most junior. I was nervous as hell.
So how was that experience?
Frightening. I mean, you can't afford to make mistakes, and the people who listen could be very critical, and people can make up stories. Boy, you hear what Red say? You probably never got anywhere of mentioning the subject, But you took your licks, you took your licks. You were listen to the commentary, you can listen back to the commentary, 71 was my breakthrough, my first stats. What I used to do is travel to Trinidad, sit in the commentary box, and hear the other outstanding commentators then. They were quite good in Trinidad, including Sir Larry Constantine, Derek Murray's father, Prior Jones, who played for the West Indies, a number of people.
So you committed for yourself and your time to the art form from the 1960s. So what we see now, what we hear now is really not a flash in the pan, but really dedication to learning and perfecting and shaping that art form for you.
Well, there was only one way you were going to get better. You had to invest in it. I mean, the first time I went to Trinidad was by boat in 1956. My father gave me a $50 passage on a British steamer, and I went to watch the 1956 trials in Trinidad at the Oval. We were going to England in 57, and you saw a wealth of talents. The first time I'm going to see Wesley Hall, the first time I'm going to see Jackie Hendricks. I can go on and go on. I wouldn't want to bore your viewers. In 56, I went to watch the trials. I went by boat. I lived in a small guest house across the road in Draggereat Road. And, it was all part
of your own journey.
All part of the education.
But so you were an avid cricket fan. You watched cricket. You started commentating on cricket. You also were part of the administration of cricket. Were you a cricket administrator?
No, never. I never got part of the administration. No. I became president of the
National Sports Council?
Yes, chairman of the National Sports Council, became president of the Basketball Association. And in Saint Lucia, I had a 6-year term as president of the Boxing Association.
But fundamentally, your journey was about commentary, honing your skills, perfecting your skills. And after 71, did you have an opportunity to travel overseas? When was your first foreign assignment to give commentary?
I think you're reading my book. In 1973, things happened very funny. There was a world title heavyweight fight in Jamaica, right? Foreman and Fraser.
Foreman, the Fraser.
George Foreman and Fraser, right? Smoking Joe. So I said, boy, a world title in the Caribbean, this is all part of your education. You got to go. So I went up.
So I suspect you told your father this was essential for your development.
My brother helped me. My brother Desmond, the late, who was a great brother, like my mother, a great brother. He was a qualified engineer, and he helped me. And I went up, and I had met Lindy Della Penna, who was the sports editor of JBC, Jamaica Broadcasting Service. Now, Della Penna is the first colored man to have played football in England before George Best, right? Yeah, before Best of Bermuda. So I had a relationship, and he said, sure, Reg, come and join us. Well, the bout lasted 2 rounds. Finish, boom, done.
You felt cheated of your investment and your time to get to Jamaica.
Well, you gotta take your knocks. But what I did, I asked if I could use the tape recorder and go into the VIP, because there was a story now after the bout, and this comes back to my GBS training, and a huge family influence, be creative, I met Muhammad Ali's manager, right? And I asked him if I can. He said, sure, by all means. There was the light heavyweight champion of the world, Bob Foster, who had come to see the fight, thinking maybe he could go up in weight. A number of challengers were around there. You know, Jimmy Ellis was around there. You're really pushing the envelope. Harry Carpenter, the British broadcasting commentator, was there. And I did a documentary, not a documentary, a kind of vox pop.
So you never, it was never planned. It was just, you just seized the opportunity given who was there.
Well, you got to think of your feet. You know, you're just going, well, I finished 2 rounds, end of story, go home. I mean, there were so many personalities there, you know. Tad Spencer.
So what did you do with this amazing collection of short interviews?
Same JBC I was there for. They took it and put it on at about 11 o'clock that night.
Oh, wow.
I look back at the fight, and there was Muhammad Ali, Angelo Dundee, and I'm asking.
So you spoke to Muhammad Ali?
No.
When his manager?
His manager.
Okay.
Muhammad Ali wasn't there. Okay. I'll get to Muhammad Ali just now. And I said to him, if you were in Fraser's corner, what would you advise him? He says, you can't advise Fraser. He has a style where he's going to take 2 or 3 punches and he hope he's going to knock you out with a left hook, right? A left to the body, a left to the kidney. You know, he was very left-handed. And, you know, he said...
that's it. There's nothing more.
Foreman knocked him out in 2 rounds. Yeah. But, you know, things happen. Delapena saw my enthusiasm. And he said to me, you know, Reds, Australia are going to play the President's 11. Clive Lloyd is going to captain the President's 11 in Montego Bay. Would you like to come back and do that match? Well, it took me about a molecule to say yes.
A fraction of a second.
So I went back to Jamaica now to do the 4-day match at Montego Bay. So we came back to Kingston, and Jamaica was playing Australia. In those days, it doesn't happen now. In those days, the touring team will probably play a President's 11, play the national team, play another practice match, and then the test match. And these days, the slam bam, thank you, man, people will arrive and play. So I did the Jamaica game, Michael Holding's first major game. Lawrence Rowe and everybody was there. And I was happy to do that. I wasn't down to do the test match, but I was happy to be there. Kojo was there, obviously. Kojo was there. He's going to do the test match because we had worked in 71. And that evening we went to dinner. It's a Chinese restaurant. And the telephone rang. It was for Lindy. And he got the news that the leading Jamaican commentator, Roy Lawrence, had jumped ship and had gone to rediffusion Jamaica, right?
So I guess that was the opportunity for...
And he said, look, you're going to do the test match. So I changed my travel plans and I did the test match. Funny enough, you know, people are so nice. Jerry Richards, the sports editor and commentator, very good commentator, underrated, called from Barbados to say, hi, Reds, we are hearing you. Would you like to come to Barbados and do the test match, which was following?
Oh, wow.
And...
so it's just one thing after the other.
Yes, so... And I mentioned the name of the Australian, McGillivray. McGillivray had come for the test match in Jamaica.
McGillivray that you listened to.
McGillivray had come to Barbados. And McGillivray was to come to Guyana, where the 3rd test match was being played. So that was my breakthrough, really and truly. Thanks.
1971, 1973 was the time where you really got the exposure.
73.
First one was 71, and your fortune, your bonanza of opportunity came in 73.
Yeah, I did one test match in 72 New Zealand when all 5 test matches drew. But 73
was your breakthrough year.
I really got very lucky.
Well, with that, we'll take a quick break. See you back after the break.
Coming up after the break, more with our guest.
Yo, Khalid, yeah. Kiba, your bad son.
Kiba, how you bad?
Y'all ask me to give me and I tell me fi pokey. She a tell me step fi grab it throat and choke it.
She a send picture and I send me emoji. Give me good brain and fi give her a trophy.
Khalid and Dada, Louis V shirt and a new bank robber. We a tweet first and the whole of them a follow. Girl them a twerk and I say them want hammer. Girl them a bubble and a wine and car. She me a first class, me a driver.
Siga for no day, you know me, no nigga for no day. No me soft, siga for no day. Ay, we have a bad bite, we ain't the bad sick about the bad slide. But we go for good, we no been paradise. Your pop so tight and your pop paradise. But come me on bike, send a guy, send a guy.
Si on va content, c'est la même. Rien à foutre, vas-y, moi la main. So a yo bof, yo ka fait moi la peine. So ka bon moi la flemme, so ka soucier pour ni la fame. C'est nous qui boss, oui be moi, même police peut pas stop. Fait faute, nous qui n'est ça sous contrôle. Even nous, ça qu'a grillé, nous toujours bien habillés. L'on dit jusqu'à qu'a brillé. C'est nous qui boss. Oui, bim, même police peut pas stop. Pas fait faute, nous qui n'est ça sous contrôle. Even nous, ça qu'a grillé, nous toujours bien habillés. L'on dit jusqu'à qu'a brillé.
C'est le temps, nous trois à l'aise. Nous sommes dehors ce soir, tonight we outside.
I have been using water pumps for many years, both at my commercial properties, residential properties, and one of the issues I've always had is reliability, high cost of maintenance. One of the major issues is if there's no water in the pump keep running, and the pump would shut down or even burn in some cases. I did some research and came across the Perreira from Bryson Company. I installed one of them on a trial and found it to be very reliable, very efficient. Cost was great as well, and most of all, it was 100% built in Italian. We know the Italian product is one of the best. I stuck with it. If you're looking for a high-performance, great quality pump, look no further than the Perreira pump from Bryson Company. You simply cannot go wrong.
So you started at a time when the West Indies seemed to be in the ascendancy. 71, 72. I think we drawed with New Zealand in 72. 73.
We lost to Australia.
We lost. But by 76, I think that was the start of these golden years that we speak of in West Indies cricket.
But maybe what started it. In 1974, they made Clive Lloyd the young captain. So he took over. It was Sobers to Kanhai to Lloyd. Lloyd had led Guyana. So they went off to India.
That was the famous India series.
First 2 test matches, West Indies won. Next 2, India won. Last test match, Lloyd made 242. The West Indies, with Derek Murray making 90, was able to win the series. So that gave us
confidence,
a starting point that something was starting to happen, because in that side you had Viv Richards, who's now Sir, you had Lloyd himself, you had Lance Gibbs, Gordon Greenidge, Roy Fredericks. There were a number of people there, that then spent the next 15 years playing for the West Indies. A real good side grew.
What made that squad so dominant? What were the ingredients? Was it just raw talent? Because I don't imagine that they had the sports psychologists and the kinesiologists and the fancy doctors, which we have now. What made that side truly unbeatable?
The fact that our Shell Shield competition was at such a high level that it produced the kind of player who could make the transition to touch cricket. The Shell Shield was very, very high quality. And the crowds were magnificent. The players work extremely hard in their respective countries. People practice 3 times a week, nets, right? So you're playing for Jamaica, you're playing for Barbados, you're playing for Trinidad.
So the discipline and the commitment was high.
Yeah. And of course, the world is changing. In those days, there was no, television to draw your attention. There was no other options. You played cricket or you played football, a little bit of athletics, a little bit of some of the smaller games. Now, of course, the young West Indian has got so many opportunities, so many challenges, that we have lost maybe 50% of people who played cricket.
So the talent is there, but because of a lack of focus, you think that we have slipped backwards a bit?
Yes, we have. We have. Our school cricket is not as good as then.
Yeah.
The school cricket that produces the Lara and the Hoopers, and I can call
no longer exists.
Question.
There is a popular feeling, let's say, that Sobers, recently deceased Gary Sobers, Garfield Sobers, was the greatest cricketer of his time. Do you also agree with that assessment?
Sure. Definitely.
And what made him stand out? Because you obviously had...
He was a genius. He was a genius. I mean, he was really very athletic. He had great footwork, great eyesight, great hands. He got himself into position very, very quickly. He didn't read from the hand. He read off the pitch. Like where Kanai would read, whether it's like break or it's googly, he would read it off the pitch, quickly getting into position. When you speak to some Australians, and I can quote Ian Chappell, where Lloyd played for South Australia, he's saying that Lloyd is the best batsman. He never saw Bradman. He never saw George Headley. But Lloyd is the best batsman he's ever seen. 254 for the rest of the world against Australia. Bradman himself describes that as one of the best innings he's ever seen.
And in your view, Sobers tops Lloyd?
Yes. Now, Lloyd has made his contribution in a different way. Lloyd was a good leader of men, because just before we were diverted, the West Indies won the World Cup in 1975, the first ever Prudential World Cup, right? It was 60 overs then. And that really welded the team. But what was also taking place, that from the Shell Shield competition, counties now were beginning. You didn't have to live in England X number of years to qualify. You could have gone to play for Lancashire as Lloyd did. You could have gone to play for Hampshire as Roberts did.
So county cricket before that was restricted.
Yes, you had to qualify, like Roy Marshall, great opening batsman from Barbados, talented plus. He had to spend a lot of time in England where he couldn't play for the West Indies. He would have affected his career. So all our players were going off to England at the end of the Shell Shield, maybe except Dujon, Logie. Everybody else was going. You had Holding.
So you had a progressive development of those talents from the Shell Shield to county and then back.
Yes. They will bring back their skills, but they didn't learn the game in England. They just tidied up the little ends, right?
What another great would be Viv Richards. What made him such a formidable batsman? What made Viv stand out?
Confidence. Maybe not the total ability of a Sobers, but confidence. He really backed himself, and he linked. Coming from an average background, he saw the cricket
as an avenue
to elevate himself, to show that, the Caribbean could produce another great. We have produced many greats, another great. I mean, he was a leader of men. He expected men to
perform.
To perform, and where Lloyd might be
more of a gentleman, more of
a quiet achiever of virtues that will let you know that you let the side down. But the game tied in. The game tied in the 50s, where we beat England in 1950. We beat England in 48. We beat India in 49. The politicians also began to feel the need for self-government, which led to independence. Jamaica is just, I think, 65 years of independence. So it had a tie-in.
So there's a resurgence of a national identity,
yes.
Self-confidence, a belief in ourselves, that the colonial masters, whether it be England or Australia, that we are now equal to you. So there was a certain self-confidence and swagger that came with our cricket in that period of independence.
When we beat England in 76, when we won the World Cup in 75, West Indians working in factories in England, driving buses, who were 5'9" became 6'7". They could walk around
tall,
with their chest
heads high
in the air and say, "Look, we beat you." They can say, "We beat you." With all our simple infrastructure, we beat you. But the side went to Australia, and we lost Bradley in 75, 76. The real turnaround you mentioned was 76, when we went back to England. And that's the famous or unfortunate statement by Tony Gregg. In a press conference, he says, these West Indians, you can put pressure on them, you can make them grovel.
Yes.
And the grovel really drove the West Indian players, quote unquote, blood in their eyes. And they really played hard. They really played hard. That itself, the test match itself is motivating, but when you have that kind of injection of a statement, you're driving the team to a higher performance.
Was that a departure in terms of the hard play of the notion that it was a gentleman's sport? There was some press at the time which pointed to the aggression that the West Indies came with. Or was that just part of how the game was played?
No, I think that was just a faux pas made by Tony Gregg, which he regretted immensely. The game became a lot more competitive. The body line, which, of course, the West Indies didn't create, was started by England in Australia. And our fast bowlers were genuine fast bowlers who could bowl the short ball, And there were rules and things like that, and we worked within the rules. But our fast bowlers dominated. Our fielding was great, Our fielding was great. Some of the best fielders in the world, So that's 76, we just took off. And, the West Indies was the most wanted team to tour. I mean, I went to Australia 12 times.
Wow.
Because of the amount of series. They created a one-day series sponsored by Benson and Hedges. India wanted us to come back because India beat us in 83 in the World Cup. So they wanted us to come back to play now the Test series. And I went to India 3 times. I mean, thanks to the Caribbean Broadcasting Union. I just want to say something very quickly. Anything that you achieve in life, if you believe you achieve it by yourself, you are a liar.
Is a team.
You're not being honest. It is people who help you to achieve. They give you the opportunity, you make sure you prepare yourself and take it. But other people give you the opportunity. I came to live in Saint Lucia in 1984. I was going to the Olympic Games. The telephone rang in Barbados. It was Dr. Vaughan Lewis.
Oh, yes.
And he said...
where were you prior to that? Where were you?
Well, I left Guyana in 1980. And I decided I will go into the Caribbean and, widen my horizons, And whilst I was working for television and radio there, CBC and then later VOB, where Kojo also worked. Myself and Kojo were friends for 50 years. I mean, very close friends. And he had his own style and I had my style. And we complemented each other. But we did the job. And you do not turn up to broadcast a victory. You turn up to broadcast a match. And you got to call it as it happens, You can't have any biases,
But before we get to the OECS, I want to ask a bit of a controversial question. You spoke of sobers. We look at Viv Richards. Brian Lara, 375 not out, 400 not
501.
out, 501. Was he the most prolific batsman that the Caribbean has ever produced?
No, Sobers was.
Is that a matter debatable, or is clear in your mind that Sobers, who never, I don't believe, put up the numbers that Brian Lara produced?
Well, I mean, he scored 8,000 test runs. He took 235 wickets, 90 catches. I mean,
No, batsman, not in terms of the other...
Batsman, Sobers. But the West Indies team had a sense on the line, a sense of where we are in the world as West Indies people. It wasn't the money. It was, representing the 5 million or 6 million people that came from the Caribbean,
And you feel after that 15 years of unbroken success in tests, that sense of responsibility to that bigger question of representing the West Indies, that fell to the wayside?
Well, initially, it was felt that we're not producing the talent we used to produce. The guys are not working as hard enough. The world was changing. There was a lot more options, a lot more money to be earned. And this is before we get to the white ball game. And our infrastructure was way behind.
But I would think that in the 1990s, leading up to the 2006 World Cup, we started to catch up with infrastructure, no?
We catched up a bit in 2007 World Cup. But before, myself and Tony Kozio went to Sri Lanka the first ever time the West Indies tour. And we were amazed at the infrastructure they had already had.
But you'd agree, though, that at the moment when we were dominating the world, we probably had a worse infrastructure.
No, it's natural talent. Indoor facilities are now par for the course all over the world. How many indoor facilities we have? We have one in Saint Lucia. I think we have one in Barbados, and maybe one in Trinidad. All the counties have indoor facilities. You can work on your youth programs and things like that.
So the fall of the West Indies cricket was not only a question of the lack of national and regional pride, but a failure to provide sufficient investment in infrastructure.
To a certain point. But then we start to get much weaker at the school level. We weren't producing the potential first-class players. And school cricket has gone, for want of a better description, gone to the dogs. Well, I don't want to come back to the OECS, but when I was with the OECS, United Insurance sponsored secondary school cricket in the OECS. It produced 22 test players. It produced over 60 first-class players, players who played West Indies B, players who played President's 11. That's not as strong anymore.
Before we go to the next break, I want to ask a pointed question. How much of our downfall was a result of governance or infrastructure, or was it the fact that the culture that the players had, the culture that we were responsible for elevating our region and putting everything else aside to focus solely on that outcome, which is to beat our opponents? That culture was what crippled us. Would you say that's the reason?
Well, the demise, official demise, started when Australia beat us for the Frank World Trophy in Jamaica. We lost the Frank World Trophy. And at that time, the world was beginning
To catch up.
And not only that, the world was beginning to improve techniques, improve infrastructure, improve dietary, gym work, how to diet and things like that. We hadn't moved in that direction, and the world is changing. I mean, very, very fast. I mean, there are schools that produce good cricketers. Now they have to employ where the headmaster, or one of the headmasters, or one of the masters
Would have done it before.
ran the cricket program. Now they have to employ a former Guyana player or a former Barbados player to come into the school to keep the cricket going. I asked Lockhart Sebastian, who played Windward's Dominica Combined Islands. Quite recently, I asked him, the last secondary school tournament you had in Dominica, this is a conversation of last year. I said, it used to be 15 when United Insurance sponsored. He said, we had about 8 schools playing. Almost a 50% loss. Now, that's talent. That's talent who could be attracted, not to basketball. I mean, there's this feeling
Other sports.
abroad that basketball is pulled away. We have very few NBA players of a West Indian background. Maybe their parents moved to the States and their kids...
Second generation.
Yeah,
Second generation.
Yeah. No. We lost the way. We lost the way.
Well, we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we look at the more contemporary players, our Darren Sammies et al. See you after this break.
Coming up after the break, more with our guest.
My name is Yannick Joseph and I'm the owner of The Green Movement. We do construction and trucking. I've been working with Bryce & Company for, I want to say, about 5 years now. It's an easy company to work with. They're very responsive. They really work with you as a contractor. They give you decent pricing. Working with Bryce & Company, you find you get a good quality product. This property behind me, we just finished, and I'd like to say from start to finish, Bryce has been here with us from the steel for the foundation, the columns, the beam, the decking took us 2 weeks because of the Easy Deck. We have the guttering from Bryce, we have the roof, fence, the whole house is Bryce, start to finish.
Experience the benefits of a tropical solar water heating system. Call 453-1868 in Castries or 454-6344 in Beaufort.
Welcome back. So, Saint Lucia has produced a cricketer who has gone on to achieve international success. And of course, that is our Darren Sammy. How would you assess Darren with respect to his contribution as a player, as a leader, as a symbol generally for West Indies cricket?
Well, Saint Lucians are extremely proud of Darren Sammy, as they are proud of Julian Alfred, and anyone who will rise to that level. Now, the question is, how did Darren Sammy develop, right? Mm-hmm. It was through a movement by a number of people, the late Desmond Skeet, the late Ernest Hilaire, the Honorable Mario Michel, I think Trevor Phillip, who was the president of the Cricket Association. They got him the exposure at Lord's. Mm-hmm. He was on the Lord's staff. Mm-hmm. And he got the coaching, he got the opportunities to play various competitions, and I think that is the key to any future. Right now you have young Ogis.
Hakim.
It's felt that young Ogis needs to go and play for an English county, even if you have to play second division.
The international exposure.
International exposure. Now, Sammy is a personality, right? And he backs himself. He backs himself. But we come back to the necessary questions of infrastructure, which one gets the impression that for the last 2 years or the last 3 years, there's a lot more happening for young cricketers at the under 15 level, or the under 17 level, playing for the West Indies, future stars, and all sorts of things, and a lot more competition, which has led to a number of people, starting to really believe that we have some players who can go on once they're willing to do the requisite work.
So there are many more. If we do what is right, do you think there are more talented players who could rise to the occasion as Darren did?
Yes, and that goes right across. That goes right across the Caribbean. Mm-hmm. If you have your talent, look at how you can bring him on, and it might mean going abroad, spending 2 years wherever, as the case may be, and that was a success. I actually was at the Hampshire ground when Darren played his first game. And he was a slip, and I remember him taking a catch, and it really had my skin going funny. But there's no shortcut. One of the things, of course, that the West Indies board is facing now is lack of money. Mm-hmm. We have just had a $12 million loan from the ICC, where the other countries have got large industries.
Supporting them.
In Australia, you have the beer industry, and in England, you have a lot of sponsorship. India, lots of sponsorship. We just don't have the industries here. Years ago.
But why have we not been able to commercialize our cricket? Because, of course, in terms of merchandise, in terms of the goodwill associated with West Indies cricket, surely we could have done a better job in extracting value, commercial value from West Indies cricket, no?
Well, I think the horse had bolted at the right time. The horse had bolted. Maybe it's a little difficult to capitalize way back when. Mm-hmm. And what's really facing us? We are the smallest member of the ICC mm-hmm. in numbers of players. And the white ball, T20, mm-hmm. T10, 100 in England, they are beginning to take away your players who want to make sure that their financial future is assured.
So that brings us to the next question, or what I've been reflecting on. The short form of the game, the T20 in particular, is it a blessing or a curse? Because it's financial opportunity, but it has come at the cost of the longer form of the game. Has it been a blessing or a curse to West Indies cricket?
Yes. It's a really funny bridge to cross. The shorter form of the game have brought financial security to our players. From a technical point of view, it hasn't produced the kind of players who probably will go on to play at the higher level. Now, the great players can play, the talented batsman can play the white ball game and wouldn't have to swipe, wouldn't have to hit across the line, right? Now, the younger players are playing white ball much too early. Yeah.
So you get a sense that the white ball, the inducement, the interest in the financial rewards from the shorter form of the game has compromised, in a sense, Test cricket. And if that is the case, and the commercial opportunity seems to be expanding in the shortened form of the game, what is the future for Test cricket?
Well, the future for Test cricket is very bleak. I mean, we are the bottom of the ladder. You know, there's a World Test Cricket Championships. We're at the bottom of the ladder. The real hurtful part is that the ICC is dominated by India, Australia, and England. The cake is not being shared. If the cake was being shared equally, the West Indies board will have a lot more money to invest into the game.
You sound like Gianni Infantino now. He's saying the same thing he said about the football, that if the pie or from football, UEFA and all of the resources, they make 80% of the returns from football is shared really with the richest countries, while Africa and Latin America and Asia suffer. And again, some of the recent controversies based on trying to ensure that the pie is distributed better. I think we're seeing the same problem with countries which have the commercial backing, not wanting to share those resources with countries and regions which don't have the benefit of such commercial backing.
Well, there is one difference with the African nations, where our players are hardly playing in England anymore. The African countries are providing a lot of material for clubs in Europe, and hence they're making their national teams stronger. The very way our players from Shell Shield went to England, we became stronger. The Africans have got a load of experience, a load of talent. We hardly have any players. The Roach will go and play for Surrey, or the All West Indian will get a 3-month contract.
What about players like Shamar Joseph? Akeem, we have a few who are coming up who show promise. You don't think that we have a stable of upcoming cricketers who may be in a position to regain that magic?
Well, we come back to the exposure. We've got to give them the exposure. We've got to give them the exposure. And they must put in the work also. They must put in the work also. To be a professional is not because you're making money. To be a professional is because you're willing to put in the hours, running in the morning, hitting balls, The likes of Lara and Chandrapal will have three or four bowlers bowling at him in the nets. How many of our players, is willing to go the extra hour, the extra yard? Yes, we come to practice. We practice for an hour and a half.
And we go home.
What else you doing?
Yeah. With that, we will come back to the future of the sport. What can we do to regain the magic? See you after the break.
The 1461 podcast is brought to you by Bryson Company Limited in partnership with IBS, Harbour Club, Tropical Solar, and 1461 Enterprise, distributors of the world's best coffee. For inquiries, contact us at sales@1461.lc or 717-9306.
So after your days of commentary, your days of seeing the highs and lows of West Indies cricket, you decided to take up an assignment in Saint Lucia, I think it's 84, to become the sports director. You stayed in that post for, I think, 12 years.
Yeah.
Tell us about that journey.
The greatest 12 years of my life.
Wow. Even better than commentating for West Indies cricket.
Because the commentary is fairly straightforward. If you're willing to do the work and you're willing to prepare yourself, you're willing to do the requisite background checks, and you're up to date with your information, the players are out there. The toss is spun, and the story is right in front of you. The OECF Sports Desk was the greatest challenge of my life, because the ideas I had to implement, I realized, and not surprising, the governments just couldn't afford to put all that money into the sports desk. You had education, you had farming, you had so many other areas of development, health. Right? And I realized very quickly that I was going to fail. Some people might say I have failed, but I think I can hold my head high and walk the streets of the Caribbean. I realized that for me to make the impact that the 12 years did make, and the man in the street will probably support that, I had to tap in onto the regional private sector. Mm-hmm. The regional private sector really financed the programs that we did. Mm-hmm. I mentioned United Insurance. Mm-hmm. They were a Caribbean insurance company. They provided the support for secondary school cricket within the OECS. Mm-hmm. Texaco took over sponsoring the national track and field championships. And I can go on and go on.
So we were at the mercy of regional businesses.
Well, I won't say I was in the mercy of regional businesses, because cricket is a religion. Cricket is a lodge. And the amount of people who I got to know who were business people who also like cricket. Once I had nurtured those contacts properly, I could go outside of the OECS financial
business
thing and tap in the things. I remember the volleyball tournament we had, the first one, it was a Jamaican shoe company who sponsored.
But that's not sustainable. I mean, it's good that you're able to do so, but for the long-term benefit, the sustainable development of this policy and infrastructure, there must be surely more investment by government, no?
Well, we come back to the old story. I mean, the people who like sport would like to see a lot more money given to sport. But, there are other sectors of development, culture, technology, all sorts of things.
Too many competing interests for this.
I mean, how do you develop a nation in a constructive, broad way by just focusing on certain areas? Right now, I think there is a feeling that the sports desk can come back, but I really don't know, because all the sponsors basically have fallen off the rail. But there are still 5 OECS tournaments still going on.
Which are they? Which tournaments are there?
There's swimming. There's bridge. Right? There is netball in a sense, but it's now the netball sponsorship by the East Caribbean Central Bank now includes a wider grouping. No, the private sector sponsorship is very vital.
What would you say was your most important accomplishment at the sports desk?
12 years is a long time to remember.
If there's one contribution you made, one outcome, one area of progress that you saw.
Well, I think when Texaco took an interest in athletics, it really boosted athletics in the OECS, because we had an OECS championships. It was held in Grenada, was held in St. Kitts, it was held in Antigua, it was held in Saint Lucia. And they funded it. I mean, the travel was looked after, the accommodation looked after, the tracksuits were looked after. And that OECS team was then invited to Barbados to take part in the international Texaco Games. If I was to look at another, I would have to talk about the United Insurance backing of secondary school cricket, because it's really produced hundreds of players. I mentioned 22 test players came out of that program. But it's difficult. I mean, the LIAT 50% rebate that I got an agreement on, where a little volleyball national team can manage to find the money to go up to the BVI and play because of the rebate. The cutting of the travel, was very important. One can go on and go on.
Well, we have to thank you for your contribution to the OECS. Certainly, to 82 to 82 to 84 to 96 was a significant period of time where regional sports, definitely had more focus and attention at the regional level. And I believe your contribution is there for all to see. But I want to ask one final question. It's an existential question, as it were, taking the long telescope at life. You've done remarkable work as a commentator. You have in some ways become the voice of cricket for some time, you and your friend Kozia. You've contributed through mentorship. You've contributed through the OECS Sports Desk. You've given many quality years of your life to that institution. When the last activity is done, when the last recording is done, when the last report is done, what would you want your legacy to be?
My greatest worry is the club structure, which is fast, very fast dwindling.
Mm-hmm.
The club structure is the lifeblood of any national body.
Mm-hmm.
If you have weak clubs, you're going to have a weak association. If you have a weak association, you're not involving the many hundreds of youths that will be around. If you have the club structure, successful political parties, successful churches, successful trade unions.
Structure.
It is their shops and their feeder areas. Sport cannot get stronger and better unless you have a simple constitution which says that you need an executive that does not play, an executive that works for the development as against the playing thing. Unless we have that situation.
We will not.
And there is a tendency now, or maybe I'm using Saint Lucia as an example, where we are, it's communities, it's Denry versus Micoud. It is Vieux Fort North versus Soufrière. But where are the clubs?
Yeah.
When I came to this country in 1984, club football was a very high standard, right? The focus is now more of community.
Rather than clubs.
The semi-pro league is community. There's no pro league among the clubs. The club structure will help delinquent youth to find its way.
Well,
if the clubs are properly running.
Well, one thing I am certain of is your voice carries quite a bit of weight in Saint Lucia when it comes to sport. And I sincerely hope that those who are listening, who are in a position of influence, could take forward your suggestion that we need to strengthen the club infrastructure, strengthen the physical infrastructure to ensure that the next generation of talent have the facility to nurture them, to ensure that they could meet their full potential.
Sport is like building a building. If your foundation is not strong,
you cannot.
It's going to collapse. But if your foundation is strong,
it
can have an impact on youth crime. Young boys can have somewhere to go to. Young girls have somewhere to go to, and you can really. You wonder why Jamaica is so strong. Well, one of the reasons is that there are 3 million people, but their infrastructure
is strong
and the administration is strong. Their club structure is strong.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Joseph Perreira, for your time and for your advice. For those of you who would like to learn a little bit more about this fascinating journey of Perreira, you can find his book, Living My Dreams. I believe it's on Amazon. And we look forward to you giving us your feedback on this book. And of course, we look forward to you joining in for the next episode of the 1461 podcast. Thanks again for joining.
This has been the 1461 podcast. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Spotify. The Airborne Academy. audio partners of the 1461 podcast.